You've been searching for the best way to generate passive income in your life and heard that real estate is a great way to do it. But you're tired of all the so-called gurus who are all talk and no substance. Get ready to celebrate because Kevin Bupp has spent 14 years successfully making it happen. This is the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Now, here's Kevin Bupp.
Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast, where our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. And our guest for this week's show is multifamily investor Spencer Hilligoss. Now, Spencer's investment firm, Madison Investing, has co-sponsored deals totaling more than 5,000 units, equaling more than $600 million. Now, as a former technology leader, Spencer built a 13-year track record of growing high-performance teams across 5 companies. 3 of them, which were unicorns, were valued at more than $1 billion. Now, in November of 2019, Spencer retired from his lucrative technology career, leaving behind the $4 billion loan origination teams that he built at LendingHome, which funds an average of 600 fix and flip transactions per month. Now, Spencer is focused on spending time with his loved ones and growing Madison Investing by helping passive investors achieve their goals. Now, here's what you're going to learn in our time today with Spencer. You're going to learn the massive commitment that Spencer made to fulfill his dreams of becoming a full-time real estate investor. You're going to learn about how Spencer was able to balance working 60 to 80-hour work weeks in the tech world and building a real estate firm, all while leaving quality time to spend with his family. You'll learn about the many lessons and skill sets that Spencer carried over from the technology world and how he's been able to apply them to the real estate space. You're also going to learn how to properly vet a sponsor and what specific framework Spencer uses to filter out the good from the bad, and much, much more, guys. And so with that, I'm excited to get onto the show with Spencer, but before we do it, just have a few quick housekeeping items. First one here. Guys, we just launched this a few weeks ago, but I want to remind you about it. It's our new partnership program called Bring Kevin a Deal, and this is where I will pay you as much as $200,000 for any one deal that's referred to me that I end up purchasing. Again, up to $200,000 referral fee for any deal that is brought to me that I end up purchasing. Now, to learn more about this opportunity to work with our team and to download my deal acquisition criteria guide, you can simply go to bringkevinadeal.com. Again, that's bringkevinadeal.com. Moving on here, guys. My team and I, we just wrapped up a new ebook that we're offering for free about the merits of investing in parking lots. Now, you guys know us as the mobile home park investors. That is our core niche, and we've been doing it for nearly a decade now. However, we are also adding in a new sector of real estate into our portfolio, which are parking lots and parking garages. Now, this is one of the most misunderstood and undervalued asset classes that exist today in the commercial real estate world, which are just a few of the reasons why we're so excited about getting into this niche and hot and heavy on this asset class. Anyway, the book is called Parking Lot Profits, and you can download your free copy by going to parkinglotprofits.com. Again, that's parkinglotprofits.com, or by texting the word parking lot to 31996. Again, text the word parking lot to 31996 and we'll send out your free copy. You guys, moving on here, a few more things. If you love what we do here at the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast, please be sure to subscribe to the show. And if you haven't done so already, take a moment to leave a rating and review on iTunes. I always love reading the reviews, and it also helps us attract amazing guests like Spencer to the show. Lastly here, before we get rolling with Spencer, I want to remind you of the free 30-minute phone call that you can have with me each and every Friday. This is where you can jump on the phone and talk about everything your heart desires about real estate investing, whether you're brand new or you're a seasoned pro. You can simply go to my website to get signed up, kevinbupp.com. And just one disclaimer here I want to make a mention of: you must include some detailed notes of what you'd like to discuss during our call together. This will allow us to spend those 30 minutes together most efficiently, right? 30 minutes goes by really quickly, and so I would love to understand what it is I can help you with before we jump on the call together. And just to give you some clarity here, this is not a sales pitch whatsoever. I'm not going to try to sell you anything on this call. This is simply a way of me connecting with other like-minded folks that have a passion for real estate investing. So again, go to kevinbupp.com to get signed up. And now, guys, without further ado, let's get on to the part of the show that you've been waiting for, which is our interview with Spencer Hilligoss. So here we go. Guys, it's my honor to introduce my guest for today's show, multifamily investor and founder of Madison Investing, Spencer Hilligoss. Spencer, how's it going, my friend?
Kevin, it is going great. Excited to be here. Thank you so much for bringing me on.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining me, and always look forward to catching up with you. And Spencer, what I'd love to do here in the beginning is, for those folks that might not be familiar with you and your background, your story, what have you, I'd love if you could take a few minutes and just share a little bit about yourself. You know where you came from, how you got involved in real estate, and where you're at today.
Yeah, happy to. And thanks again for having me on, Kevin.
Yeah.
So I think, I grew up in the Bay Area, California. It's got a reputation in the real estate investing community as being one of the most expensive markets. Yeah, just incredibly expensive. But it's also known for being technology, right? And I got into the local business, if you want to call it that, of software companies when I was just fresh out of college. And I was in that business for 13 years. It has been what I've known. And so I went through this pretty fast track leadership career for 13 years and across 5 different software companies. And it was a beautiful thing. I mean, it was really hard. I was thrown into some scenarios that were, far more challenging than I was really ready for, even in my mid 20s, leading teams of 200 plus people at the age of 26. And in hindsight, I'm so grateful that I got to go through all that because somehow it led me back to be in real estate. And when I say back, I guess what I'm really saying is I used to hide the fact that I actually grew up in a real estate household. And so my dad was a broker for 30 years. He was a residential real estate broker, one of the top ones in the country, back in the 90s. And so he used to make me work open houses. I mean, I think when people ask me like, what's your experience in real estate? I'm like, do you count the fact that I was like literally on projects when I was 6 and probably not, but I would say that working open houses for mansions and glad handing with affluent real estate, buyers, that stuff soaked in somehow into my brain. And I always told my dad I was not going to get into the real estate business because it simply wasn't cool enough for me back then, Kevin, apparently. And man, was I wrong. So now here we are. And we passively invest in real estate syndications. We had originally started off with rental portfolio building, and we found our way to bigger is better. We invest in storage and mobile home parks and multifamily. And now we help other people passively invest as well.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I appreciate that background there. And it's funny that you mentioned, it wasn't cool enough. It wasn't a cool enough profession. And I'm guessing probably at that young age, you looked up to your father and, he's an adult. He's a professional. He wears khaki pants. He tucks his shirt in. You're like, God, I don't want to do this when I grow up. This does not seem cool whatsoever. But now look at us. Now we're the old guys in the room, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
I don't wear pleated pants or anything, but still, yeah, now we're the old guys in the room. So hopefully our kids look at us a little differently as far as, real estate is.
You'd like to think so.
Yeah. So, well, hopefully they at least get to identify all the unique lifestyle that we get to live and the flexibility. And that's one thing that I talk to my wife about it quite often. How can we get them to fully comprehend and understand that, the life that we live, not that others don't live a complete, ours isn't better than another lifestyle, right? However, we have a lot of flexibility that I know my parents didn't have growing up, right? They worked at 9 to 5. They had 2 weeks of vacation a year. We got to take one family vacation a year, like it was for 1 week. And then after that, those other days were pretty much reserved for if I exceeded my sick days, I have to use a vacation day. And I mean, it was very structured. I remember my mom complaining about, having to literally get approval, kind of raise her hand at her data entry job to take a pee break. I mean, just, we don't live that type of lifestyle. And I want to make sure that our kids, and maybe you've got the secret here, how do we instill, ingrain that in our children that you are very blessed with this life that you've been given, and that it's anyway. So not to go down a rabbit hole here, but I know you've got kids as well, and so I think it's a daily struggle that I go through is how to ingrain that into them and instill values, what have you.
Totally. Well, and I think just a quick comment on that too, Kevin, because man, do I agree with all the points you just made. I mentioned a moment ago growing up in like a real estate household, and at the time I thought maybe it wasn't cool. But although I soaked up some of those learnings about what it meant to be an entrepreneur, I literally asked my dad at one point, why do you wake up at 4 a.m.? I didn't understand. I was like, why would anyone work that hard? And so here we are. I wake up at, I don't do it that early anymore. When I was working my full-time job, which I retired from, quote unquote, just 7 months ago, I left my career in tech about 7 months ago to be a full-time real estate investor. To make that happen, I was waking up at 4. And so we kind of become our parents in so many ways. But what I was going to mention is that the lessons I try to impart on our boys now, despite the fact they're very early on, right? We have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. And I look at the learnings I got from watching my dad's business grow and being part of it, but then also going through a really challenging time as a family. And we call this period of time the dark decade, if you want to. I basically lost my younger brother, Justin, to pediatric cancer. He lived a brief, beautiful life. And I think it's relevant for this discussion because that impact and the series of dominoes that kind of fell after that, where, okay, he passed away. Those events typically trigger a divorce. It's very common in those scenarios where parents lose a child. And then my dad's business had to downsize significantly. Our lifestyle had to downsize significantly. So I got to see the other side of that high flying entrepreneurship lifestyle, because he had active income and he didn't make investments. And so at least not in real estate that cash flowed. And so as we talk about cash flow, I think I look at those learnings and I look about the financial literacy and how much that matters to me now. And I didn't know at the time, as a 15, 16-year-old working open houses, like, wow, I'm really learning about things like financial defense and financial offense. I looked at that in hindsight as a young adult, right after my brother passed away. And I thought, okay, what can I take away from this to mean something? And now as a father of my own, I would say that is a core set of principles that I try to instill along with Jennifer, who's my co-founder in our company, and the mother of my children. We try to instill this notion that financial literacy is something everyone should be talking about. It's not the taboo thing that my parents didn't want to bring up at the dinner table, because that's something that mom and dad don't talk about because it's not appropriate to talk about. Right. And so for all those reasons, I think it's totally relevant to bring up in terms of parenting and try to instill this stuff in our kids.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to make sure that we don't skip over one of the points you just made there. And that's, you're speaking to your tech background and working that as a full-time job up until, you said, was it 7 months ago that you made the full-time transition over to real estate?
I did. Yeah. Okay. I was right before COVID-19 decided
good timing.
The globe.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk about that. I want to hit on the sacrifice. I'm assuming it was a fairly large one. You mentioned getting up at 4 a.m., probably working, late into the evening after the kids are put back down, right? You've got a 2 and 6-year-old. So, probably go to bed 8 o'clock, whatever, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And then you got a couple more hours probably of work thereafter as you're trying to juggle two things at once, right? With the objective, I'm assuming your original objective was to, at some point, have your real estate income surpass your career income at the technology field and allow you to basically maintain the same lifestyle and truly pick one or the other, right? Obviously, you picked real estate, but there's obviously a big sacrifice there. It's not easy. Lots of long nights, long weekends. I mean, every waking moment, I'm guessing that you were not in your tech world, you were in the real estate world or your family world, right? I mean, there was really probably very little downtime. So if you could, please speak to that. For those that are listening, there's a lot of people out there that are working that full-time job. They're in that career path that maybe they see as it's not, they don't want to carry it through the end. It's a dead end for them, right? Yes. They want to make a change in their life, but change is difficult in and of itself. It's especially difficult when you need to make that change, but have that the other side actually replace the income, that you were making in your full-time job, right? And so anyway, I'd love you to speak for that if you could.
Oh, you're going to run the risk of getting me too chatty on this topic. I think,
no, it's important. It's a big one.
It's a huge one, and it is truly the most, I would say the most motivating topic to bring up, because I have so many friends, like personal friends and colleagues that are kind of trapped in that cycle. But I do want to put this disclaimer out there too, Kevin, that so much of the real estate investing community runs the risk of also saying, screw the W-2 world because it's not good. And I would just want to put this disclaimer out there to say, I cherished my time in that career. Mm-hmm. And there was times that were absolutely brutally crushing. And to the point where in 2014, 2015, I was at this is 2 companies ago, at a very quote unquote hot startup. It's like $1 billion valuation, which means it's a unicorn company. It's what they call tech companies that have $1 billion valuation. And I was putting in 80 to 100 hour weeks in office. And that doesn't include working at home. And so that was the spark that lit the fuse for me to ask the question of, okay, when's this going to give? And I have an infant son. At the time, I had an infant son, and it strained our marriage. And Jennifer has her own very demanding career. And so dual income is kind of required by a lot of us that live in places like the Bay Area or New York. You have to have these streams of income. So long story short, I knew something had to change. And frankly, someone even asked me the question, and this is relevant here too. they asked me the question, what if this company has a massive exit? It's what everyone wants to do in Silicon Valley. Everyone wants to win the Silicon Valley lottery. They all want to have a huge IPO. They want to have some big acquisition. They want to get yacht money. I don't really care about getting a yacht. I would like the option to, but hey, if I got a 7-figure exit number and that amount came in, what would I do with it? Someone asked me that. They're like, what would you do with it? I had no idea. I had no idea what I would do if that came in. I was like, okay, let's put that money into an index fund. And I was like, that's the best answer I had. I'd been investing in 401ks for a decade, and it stopped me dead in my tracks. And so, that brought up one thing for me that really led me to go and research like crazy into the real estate stuff. But back on your question, the sacrifice is this. Like, I believe that we are the sum of our habits. And most of us are habitualized, first and foremost, to expect that we can't function as a family and as a person unless a biweekly or semi-monthly paycheck hits our account direct deposit. And at least I'm speaking for the corporate white collar world. Mm-hmm. And that's an addiction. I mean, I actually had a coworker at one point, this about five years ago, roughly. He said, Spence, most people don't realize they have a legitimate addiction to a paycheck. And I actually, at the time I heard that, it stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, I don't know if I agree with that, because it kind of made me feel like I was one of those people. And but that is the first step. It's a mental step. Someone has to realize life exists beyond that moment. There is life beyond, and the sun will still come up once that last direct deposit comes in, and you never see it again. That was terrifying for me when I left my W-2 job at first. It was terrifying, right? And here I just want to call out the fact that I couldn't get any work done on my own business while I was working in the middle of the day at my day job, because I have obligations and I take that seriously. I don't cut corners on delivering on my day job, but I did cap my hours, and I did say no to 3 different promotions during that time. And that's not a brag, that's a fact. And so if people want to do side hustle stuff, you got to find the time to give your all fully focused and still kick ass in your day job. And if you're not doing well enough there, stop the water cooler talk, stop going out to dinners, stop going out to lunches, sacrifice the social time, sacrifice your Netflix, I put away my Xbox. I dialed up my exercise. I dial up because you need the physical energy. You're going to need, I have too much caffeine, admittedly, but I try to eat healthy enough. I still go on some Oreos sometimes. So you got to find a balance that works for you. But I got to say, I was open with my employer, and I know not everyone can be. I went to them and I said, in a couple of years, I'm going to try to leave and do my own thing. And thankfully, I had a COO and a CEO that were willing to field that. And in all fairness, I was at a real estate company. I was at a company called LendingHome that do fix and flip loans. They're now the biggest single family fix and flip lender in the country. When I got there, it was 150 transactions a month. I was the guy that had to go in and build their loan origination group that eventually did $4 billion in loans. So we were doing 600 transactions a month. So I had to go do that in the day. And so I was, in all fairness, thinking about real estate. It wasn't commercial real estate, but I was thinking about real estate during the day. So I don't want to keep belaboring the point, but you asked a really good question. I think the specificity is helpful for people.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate you sharing that. And let's speak to the real estate side. I mean, you're in commercial real estate. You ultimately chose asset classes that are, classified underneath commercial, not residential. You obviously had your first taste of real estate working for this tech company, right? Which basically offer fix and flip loans for residential real estate investors. But what carried you over to the commercial side when, seemingly that outlet was already there, in the residential space? And that's where a lot of people, where a lot of people start, right? I mean, that just seems like the logical stepping stone before getting into bigger deals. And so I'd love to, hear from your perspective, why not residential, but yet commercial?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say there was a master plan, Kevin. There really wasn't. I mean, at the time I was working at this lender, we had very traditional investments, right? We have a home. So we somehow found our way into the market in the Bay Area in 2013. We bought our home. And I think that some people think that's an investment. We don't want to get down the road of saying this, it's not one, but I'll just leave it there. We came years later to work in this, like I worked in this fix and flip lender. So I had colleagues that were saying, go flip a house. And they would literally spend their nights and their weekends flipping houses. They had their own businesses on the side. So they were in my ear, even like my direct reports, people on my teams that, that I worked alongside, and they would say, Spence, you should just go do it. You could do it. You understand this stuff now. And I'm like, I cannot swing a hammer. I am not handy. I can understand a spreadsheet. I understand business. I understand these things. But the thing that came down to me, Kevin, is like, I'm an operations and process guy. And so for those on the podcast that can't see my hand gestures, I'll try to not use these. There's a spectrum of active and passive investing on each end of the spectrum. And I'm a very visual guy, so that's how I think about it. Active is brokering, is wholesaling, is flipping. And there's a place for these things. These are respectable businesses, right? But I like predictability. I like, frankly, boring forecasting and predictability. And I've been forecasting in business and forecasting in operations and sales roles for years, for more than a decade. So that's what I want. And I didn't like the fact that we finally got the courage to go and buy a local duplex in the Bay Area. And we didn't necessarily know what cash flow forecasting was. We didn't know how to say, how much money per month do we want this deal to make us? So we went and spent, we bought a $430,000 duplex in Vallejo, California. We still own it now. It cost us $100,000 plus cash outlay, and it cash flows a whole $250 a month. Yay! So not a home run, and it's appreciating. That's great. We would do that. We would do it differently in hindsight, but it took us a whole summer driving around with our infant son in the car just to find that property. And then we realized, why we do that? Our dollar goes further out of state. We went and bought turnkey properties. So we bought a handful of turnkey properties in Kansas City. We still own them now. They do cash flow. But then we realized, oh, wow, an eviction. Wow. Oh, we have to go deal with an occupancy problem. So now 100% occupancy and one single family home drops to zero overnight. And we suddenly don't have predictability. So now we've got to go and find something that is just better and more resilient in all those things that we care about and want within our forecasting approaches that I used in tech. And so I got really nerdy about multifamily, and I read 24 books. I listened to 400 podcasts just like yours. And, and I'm so grateful to have found them, because that's when I found this whole thing called multifamily. And I started investing in passively. And so I signed up for coaching programs, dug into it. And I just love the fact that in a 400 unit apartment building, you have 400 people paying the rent. One of them leaves, you still have 399 other people that are there, and it's just those simple principles sound so clear when you say them out loud, but it's really scary and confusing when you're first getting into this and you're trying to be passive. And we almost made a huge mistake. And I want to call this out for the folks listening, because this is where I see most folks that reach out for advice every single week now to us. They ask about this. They say, well, passive investing looks great, but I feel like I can get better returns if I do it myself. And to that I say, okay, great, more power to you. I'll talk to you in 2 years after that doesn't go the way you want. Because I hope and encourage everyone to go get into real estate investing, because I think it's the asset class that will help them win the most on cash flow, in addition to equities and stock investing. I'm not the or guy, I'm the and guy. But active investing is a full-time job. It's really hard and takes expertise. And I think that's where I see people almost making the mistake, in some cases making the mistake that we almost did, where we said, I wanted to go be the next big apartment owner. I live in the Bay Area. Someone literally told me, a mentor told me before we went down and built this business, and he said, you've got to take stock of your geography, Spence. You live in a money state. You don't live in a deal state. And I thought that was very deeply offensive at the time. It'll break the hearts of my real estate brethren in the California area. But I will just say, for cash flow investing, I believe that to be true. And so in any case, thanks for bearing with the long-winded answer.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I think another one of the big benefits of being a passive investor is allows you diversification, which you had made a mention. Being an active investor, which we own and operate multiple different funds. I mean, we're very much on the active side. We've got limited partners that invest with us, but we're very much on the operational side. And one of the big mistakes I see of active investors is spreading themselves thin amongst their asset classes, right? Like not just mastering one and being the multifamily guy, being the mobile home park guy, being the self-storage guy, but thinking that they can be the master of all. That's a huge mistake. And it's just, I'm not going to say you can't do it. I know some folks that do it very successfully. but it creates a lot of challenges. Every one of these individual businesses is very different than the next. There's similarities, there's crossovers there, but they're very different than the next. A self-storage business is very different than that of a mobile home park. Mobile home park is very different than that of a traditional multifamily, and the list goes on and on and on. However, in the passive role, it allows you to diversify. If you like all those different asset classes and you'd like to be invested in those asset classes, it allows you to diversify amongst not just different asset classes, different sponsors as well, without having to necessarily, I'm not going to say master, because you really need to be educated, you need to understand the asset classes you're investing in, the sponsors, the track record, the intricacies of their underwriting, all the above, right? You need to understand it, but you don't necessarily need to understand what the boots on the ground looks like, right? That getting your hands dirty on a daily basis, which is in and of itself a very large challenge to master. And so, there's obviously pros and cons on both sides, but as you had mentioned, you're very much a systems and operational type of guy, more so on the behind the scenes. Like, you like building out systems, you like analyzing spreadsheets, you like underwriting deals, what have you. But as far as like being on the front side of it and actually being out there and swinging a hammer or dealing with contractors, dealing with the property management side of the business, which is the ugly part of the business. It's not the fun part of the business. That is not your forte, right? And so you've identified your strengths and your weaknesses, which I think it's probably one of the things I tell folks that come my way, like, and they're just new and they're going through the debate you just mentioned. Should I be active? Should I be passive? I think there's higher returns on the active side. And then you start digging into their background, their story, like what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and I try to be very forthcoming and honest with the little bit of information I have, and say, based on what you've told me, I think you may be good on the active side, right? Like, you've got the background, you got the skill set, and it seems to excite you. But if you're only chasing those returns and you want to be active just for the returns, I think you might get pretty disenchanted very quickly with all the other operational and ugliness that goes along with being an active investor, dealing with the contractors, property management side, what have you. Like, there's a lot more to it. It's not all cherries and rainbows. And anyway, so not to digress or go down this rabbit hole here, but I think that's a very valid point. I think that being an investor getting started, you need to understand like what your financial targets are, what's your long-term goal, what's your long-term objectives. You need to really build, whether it be active or passive around that. And if you can achieve it being passive and not having to go take the additional risk of being active, then I say that's a much more, a much more, fluid path for most folks, path of least resistance, I would say, than getting on the active side. Anyway, again, I'm starting to ramble a little bit now, but it's a very important point that I want to really nail home, because a lot of folks that are listening are in that stage right now, trying to figure out which route they want to go.
Totally.
So moving on there, I want to talk about being on the passive side. And one of the big mistakes I see folks make is it gets sold in the marketing aspect of sponsors,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, this business is all about marketing. Whether it's a broker listing a deal, whether it's a sponsor, putting a OM out, for review, it's all about marketing, right? There's beautiful pitch decks, PowerPoint presentations, webinars, what have you. But the bigger mistake I see is that folks making decisions based solely on, the sponsor's underwriting, the beautiful pitch deck, the beautiful pictures of the property and the business plan, but not fully comprehending all the above, not fully comprehending the underwriting, not understanding where to poke holes in the underwriting, not understanding, just the intricacies of that business plan and what's the reality of that really playing out 100% of how it's actually laid out, and what are some of the risks associated with it, what have you. And so what has been your system, and how have you guys gone about really not just identifying quality sponsors, but really vetting them, putting them through the vetting process and getting them out the other side and filtering out the, not going to say the bad ones, but the more risky ones, and landing on the ones that are tried and true, solid track record that you feel your money is the safest with?
Yeah. Oh man, that's an exciting topic. I just think it's so much fun to talk through this stuff. And so the way I think about it is with a framework. So much of scaling, again, to borrow heavily from my technology career, originally I went to a big company. My first company I went to was Intuit. Everyone knows it for the most part, QuickBooks, TurboTax, all the rest. But then after 5 years there, I sought out deliberately going to small, very early stage companies, because that's where I was seeking the most personal growth. As ridiculous as that might sound to some people who purely make decisions based upon their salary level, I literally took a 40% pay cut at one point to go to a really early stage company. And in hindsight, I'm sure glad I did, because they teach me things like frameworking. And frameworking in this case for real estate is you look at the team, you look at the market, you look at the deal. And I didn't come up with that. Brilliant people in real estate decades before me came up with those three pillars. And so I did repurpose them and tailor them and deepen them to tailor to our investing needs. And we did this purely as passive investors first, Kevin. Like we did. Now we are also managing our passive investing program where we have other people that we help invest alongside. But when we first started this stuff, we just built this for our own capital, And so we look at, just to give you a couple examples, you look at the team. So basically the who. This is the most important thing when you're talking about passive investing. And why? It's because you can build the best, let's use the vehicle analogies. You can use a car, you can use a train, you can use a rocket. However well you craft the thing, you need a pilot. And if you don't have a person piloting it who knows what the hell they're doing, it's going to go poorly. And so track record is important. So we look at 5 things. We look at track record, we look at approach, we look at the team, we look at the communications, and we look at their values. And I know that the 5th point I have to just call out, because I think so many people out there who come purely from the finance and real estate background, I hear them kind of just laugh or giggle at the values call out. And that's mostly just because of lack of familiarity of putting it into an operational process, because you can. And so values matter. And we're not talking about squishy stuff. I think we're talking about, here's an example. Right now we work with a handful of sponsors. We took 6 months just to get to know the most recent ones that we added onto our platform. One of them that didn't make the cut, when I asked him the question, what is your philosophy on tenant relations? And he didn't have an answer. And so we're still friends, but we're just not doing business with them. And it's because that stuff matters to us. And it's not just touchy-feely stuff. It's good business. And I would have to say, as we are about 24 hours or 48 hours away from rent collections for July at the end of stimulus money about to run out probably for a bunch of tenants across the country, yes, I'd say this is a relevant topic now more than ever. So that's the kind of stuff we look at. So track record, have they done it before? Have they been through, do they have failure response conditioned within the way that they do business? And failure response is a fancy way of saying, have they been through something brutally challenging in their entrepreneurship career? And if they haven't done it in real estate, like a capital call, or they have to go back to their investors and ask for more money, that's fine, as long as they have a equally challenging, brutally kick you in the teeth style entrepreneurship challenge. And they've worked through that. And it matters because when they have my money or someone else's money that we are also working with, we can't have them sitting there like super stressed and making desperate decisions because they don't really know how to do it because that's their first time going through something stressful. So, anyways, on the who, I just wanted to call out some of those things. Of course, you look at the market. Of course, you look at the deal. You want to make sure that you're in a place that is market-wise growing, demographics and the growth story is going well. You're looking for jobs now more than ever. I think that's important to be critical and looking closely at that stuff all the way down to the neighborhood. There's plenty of great markets at the MSA or broad geographic footprint level. But if you don't go down to the neighborhood, it's not going to be specific enough and you could really miss the mark. And last but not least, on the deal, we look for cash flow. Not to say that there aren't great development deals or new build deals out there. We specifically in our investment and with our investor group, we look for cash flow, like year one cash flow. And so that is what we're targeting on that front. And you got to have cash reserves. I do think that ample cash reserves is going to be an important part for a lot of the value add plans that you see out there.
Yep. No, great feedback there. Appreciate that. And have you seen any major changes happen, given the point in time that we find ourselves in, during this pandemic, as things open back up, they close back down. I mean, real estate is, it's fared well, at least residential, which the side that we're in, multifamily, mobile home parks, self-storage has done quite well. Obviously the hotel sector, has taken a beating. Retail probably will ultimately take a beating. It's going to take a little bit longer for that to play out and into what's reality, as far as, tenants not renewing leases, tenants not paying their lease, what have you. But as far as, opportunities coming your way over the last couple of months, have you seen a slowdown? Have you seen a, uptick as far as, new opportunities coming out? Has there been price adjustments? What are you seeing in your world?
Yeah. Oh man, this is a fun topic too. So multifamily slowdown for sure.
Slow down on what
Multifamily.
side? Meaning just transactions in general?
Yeah, yeah, transactions in general. But I would say on the buy side, you got a lot of slowdown because the price discussions are are not reconciling. You basically got sellers and who aren't acknowledging the fact that the price is going to have to go down. And then on the buy side, you got people who want to get a great deal. And so I think that seems like it's slowly starting to resolve, but I think it largely has not yet. On the lending front, man, I mean, we had two deals going into COVID-19 wave one. This is back in like March, April. And one of those had to die. We had to return millions of dollars of capital to folks, and thankfully they were very positive on that because they felt we handled it well, which we're grateful for. But on the other side, lenders were getting really tight on their requirements, but that now, I mean, this is according to multiple different transactions and in detail, talking to lenders and mortgage brokers and et cetera. I mean, agency lenders are looking for business.
Yes, they are.
So, they're really looking for business right now, and so they're willing to talk. And I think that they've loosened some of those requirements.
The reserve requirements,
yeah, which is great to see. And so on the storage front, I am thankful and thanking our lucky stars that we actually had the foresight 6 months before COVID hit. We had no idea COVID was coming. Clearly, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is we were 10 years into a bull market. We knew that there was something that was going to come. We didn't know what the trigger event would be, but as we learned from people way smarter than me, recessions don't just happen. Recessions happen because of a trigger event. And for this recession, we all know what that trigger event is. It's COVID-19. So we knew that was coming. So we actually deliberately went out and started structuring the right partnerships and getting our business slightly adjusted for a pivot. And the pivot was this: we're not stepping away from multifamily. Multifamily was our primary asset class focus for the past years that we've existed. We are going to shift self-storage and mobile home parks above the priority stack as to what the types of deals we're underwriting and looking at. And so I'm very thankful for that because storage flow has been great. And so in that regard, very, very pleased with that. I would say that it's been met with tons of receptiveness on the investor front as well. And so, I think storage is a killer asset class. I know that you've been talking quite a bit about things like RV and boat storage. We're literally doing something like that right now.
Yeah.
And so, all that stuff has been very well received.
Yeah, very exciting. And I'd love to get your perspective as well on the, just again, where we're at in the pandemic. I personally feel that the last couple of months really haven't been a realistic barometer of tenants' ability to pay, whether it's multifamily, mobile home parks, even self-storage, right? Folks have stuff in storage paying $150, $200 a month. Obviously, those that are unemployed, those that stayed employed should have remained the same, right? Should have just been status quo. Those that became unemployed due to the pandemic, companies shutting down or furloughing staff, what have you, a lot of them receiving, more income than what they had from their, employment, with the additional $600 a week. And so, the last couple of months, most people should have been able to still continue to pay their rent, which is the reason why I think we haven't really seen any type of, not a significant downtick as far as multifamily collections, mobile home park collections, even self-storage collections or payments, what have you, right? Most people haven't felt the pain yet, even though the unemployment numbers are at an all-time high. What are your thoughts? I mean, what's your opinion on assuming that this, the additional stimulus runs out on the 25th of July, which is coming in the very near future? What do you think happens if that doesn't get extended?
That's the big question, right?
I know you're not an economist, and this is just these are all opinions. My opinion is I think that we're going to see some. I think that I don't know how ugly it would get, but I think that the pain will really start to show itself at that point in time if there's not an additional stimulus package put in place or that unemployment benefit isn't extended, because regular unemployment benefits are not sufficient to really live on. They're not. It's not much.
That's
money.
right.
What, $300 some odd or something a week? I don't know the exact amount, but it's not a lot.
Yeah. I mean, and I appreciate you kind of beating me to the punch on the disclaimer, of course. Like everyone else who might be asked about a market conditions, forward-thinking, future-looking perspective, this is not a fact. I'm not an economist, but I can give my opinion. And my opinion is that the second wave of COVID is going to be significantly more painful. Mm-hmm. And I think that we're starting that ramp right now. This is and I'm going to lean into the mic when I say this. This has zero to do with political opinion. It is about it just is. I mean, I'm a data guy, so like wherever you fall on that spectrum, more people are going to get infected in the second wave than in the first, and that is my opinion. I think unfortunately more people are going to lose their lives as a result of that as well, and it is a tragedy. But that said, wear your damn mask. So also not a political opinion. Went on a 4-mile run yesterday wearing a mask, by the way, folks. So in any case, I'm off the soapbox. I think that the wave is going to hit, and it's going to hit C-class hardest, is my personal opinion. I know that maybe that's wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I think, a few years ago, I used to have a very different opinion of A-class. I think that A-class, in the right business plan, in the right context and submarket, with the right operator, can be a good play still. And like we even did one earlier this year. And so I think it's going to just depend. It's going to be much more surgical. If people are transacting and looking to get into deals, I think there is going to be pain. I think there's going to be people that can't pay. Even some of the reporting, I literally just read an article about this morning. It was analyzing the analysis of occupancy reporting from the past 4 months. And it said, why does it seem like there's a disconnect between the occupancy reporting that we're seeing so prolifically with 90% plus collections, nationally, all that stuff. But you're hearing the stories of stacking up eviction filings that have not been executed because even though there's a hold on evictions, that doesn't necessarily mean that people can't file. Mm-hmm. So they're filing for evictions in many different places, in many different geographies. And so all of a sudden, are we going to see a wave of evictions? And is anyone's guess, And so I'll just say that the bottom line of that comment is it seems like it could be underreported number of or overstated occupancy rates because they have potentially been omitting the low end. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. We will see. And I really hope.
Tell.
I mean, I'm an optimist. I will also say that I hope none of that happens. I hope that it's a muted version of what I just described.
No, that's great. I'm an optimist as well. I really hope for the best, but you still have to kind of plan for the worst. Have you seen a lot of the sponsors that you work with just kind of slowing down and stepping back, just waiting to see what's going to happen, or are they still fairly aggressive with new opportunities coming their way and looking to still buy given the current pandemic?
Great question. It is a mix. It's a mix. I would say mostly still trying to buy, but not compromising on underwriting standards makes for a very light pipeline. So, and I think that the general sentiment is, if I had to aggregate it across a few sponsors, Q1 of 2021 is going to be hot. But for the rest of this year, it's going to be light. And if it happens, it's going to be finding a needle in a haystack. Yeah. And so that's primarily on the multifamily side. And so I think, on mobile home park and self-storage, you've still got some reasonable deal flow. Still a confusing environment though.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I think there's always deals out there, right? Sometimes you just have to dig a little harder to find them.
Yes.
Hence the needle in the haystack. Yeah. Well, fantastic. Well, Spencer, I want to be respectful of your time here. And so we're nearing the end. And what I'd love to do is roll into what I call the golden nugget segment of the show. And this is where I'd like to ask if you had just one final golden nugget of advice or wisdom that you could leave with our listeners here today that might inspire and motivate them as they progress in their real estate investing career, what would that one last golden nugget be?
You will shock yourself with what you are capable of. And I think the example would be, I used to think I wasn't creative. I used to think I wasn't entrepreneurial. I had a former mentor of mine that said, Spence, I have met executives that lead huge teams at companies, VPs, and they could not run a gas station. And I thought that at the time, I was like, damn, that's pretty harsh. But in hindsight, I just didn't want to be that guy. Yeah. And a 13-year career in corporate world, I will tell you, just because you've only been in a company, that doesn't mean you can't go out and do your own thing.
Yeah.
So surprise yourself with what you're capable of.
I love it, brother. Love every minute of it. For those folks that are listening that want to learn more about you and your company and what you guys have going on, what's the best place to find you, my friend?
Yeah, please do reach out. Our website is MadisonInvesting.com. When you get there, there's a big button on the top right. Just click join the list, and then you will have to talk to me. I promise I won't bite.
Oh boy.
I know it's tough. It's tough. I'm so mean. But no, it's really the best part of my week when I get to connect with new potential investors and members of our club. And so do that. I'm also super active on LinkedIn. I know Kevin is as well.
Yeah,
so
no, you got some great stuff on LinkedIn, my friend. It's phenomenal.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I mean, like, same goes to you. I think doing video is one of the hardest things you could do, but when you do it right, it goes very well and it resonates with folks. So please, like reach out and connect. I'd be happy to chat.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Spencer, always fun, my friend. Glad to have you on and just connect and talk shop, talk real estate, talk pandemic. Stay safe, stay healthy, and look forward to hopefully we'll have the opportunity in the future where our paths will cross at a live event at some point. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen in 2020, but I'm shooting for optimistically 2021 that hopefully there will be a world where we actually have real estate conferences again. I like the Zoom thing. I enjoy being with my family and not having to leave, but I also love the in-person networking and connecting with folks, face to face versus Zoom. So
we'll have to have a party.
Yeah. Well, Spencer,
thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you again. And guys, thank you for tuning into this week's show. And until we meet again next week, this is your host, Kevin Bupp, wishing you huge success. You guys take care.
Congratulations! Now you've got more of the best tricks of the trade in building massive amounts of passive income from real estate. For more amazing resources, visit realestateinvestingforcashflow.com. And we'll see you next Monday morning.